Hello YouTube, welcome back to another special episode on our WeDeyCode codecast. As I told you, every episode is special, so please, as you're watching this, make sure to like, subscribe, hit that share button, and let others join in the fun. So today, we're going to be speaking with Ijemma, who's actually built an application that helps people with understanding the Igbo language, which is a language from Western Africa. In addition to that, she'll be showing us how she did it and how you as well can actually build your own community. So I'd like to pass it off to Ijemma. Welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Would you be able to just tell us maybe a brief background about yourself? How did you get into computer science? How did you even come up with this idea? What was on your mind?
Yeah, it's kind of a long story. I'm Igbo American. My parents were born in Nigeria, and they're Igbo as well. They had my sisters and all my brothers over in Nigeria, but they had me in California. So growing up, I was very exposed to two separate cultures, where my primary most exposed culture would be American Californian culture, while at home and was in the Igbo community in California. That's where I started to learn more about my Igbo heritage, culture, traditions, and things like that. Everything except the language. My parents came to America really believing in providing my sisters and I the best, American experience. And that unfortunately included them not teaching us Igbo. So growing up, we would speak English in the household. I could hear my parents speak Igbo to each other, but they would never speak it to me and my sisters. And that was just something that was very normal. A lot of immigrant kids, I was growing up with middle school and high school, the same exact experience where their parents would speak to each other in Igbo, but not in English. So I didn't really think much of it growing up. And then also as a kid, I was very drawn to digital, hardware and software. I always try to figure out how digital clocks and smartphones worked. And I think I would always tinker around with playing with these old cathode ray tube TVs and put magnets up on them and see what would happen. And my parents actually loved that, and they loved me destroying TVs. But it was really interesting to see how people can just build something to create an even better experience. So throughout middle school and high school, I got really into building websites on HTML and CSS. By the time I got into high school, I started learning a little bit more JavaScript to do cool few animations in my websites. And then I ended up taking AP Computer Science in high school. I realized I've been doing okay with computer programming. I didn't know exactly what my career would look like for computer programming, but I really enjoyed it. I thought that it was not the biggest waste of time. My parents really liked the idea of me learning it. So I took AP Computer Science. It was in Java. Absolutely loved it. I felt like a lot of the concepts just instantly clicked, or for an AP class, clicked a lot faster than any of my other AP classes. So by the time I took AP Computer Science in high school, I just thought that it was a natural progression to try out computer science when I went to school up in New Hampshire at Dartmouth College. So I went to Dartmouth College with the computer science mindset in mind, and luckily I stuck with it for the 4 years. But what also was very interesting at my time at Dartmouth was that not only was I studying computer science, Dartmouth required that each student take at least 1 year's worth of foreign language. And I looked at my options. They had a lot of different options like Greek and Spanish, but I ended up choosing Japanese because I was a really big fan of anime growing up in middle school and high school. And I thought to myself, maybe it would be kind of nice to be able to learn Japanese and watch anime without subtitles. So I ended up taking Japanese for my first year. Ended up loving the process of learning about a language and a culture that I ended up minoring in Japanese. And through that experience, while I was also studying computer science, studying Japanese, it started to become a little bit more clear how powerful technology was becoming back between 2015 and 2019. I feel like I got exposed to so much about the tech world. At the same time, I realized how not difficult it can be to learn about a new language or new culture, and learn that about Japanese. By the time I graduated from college, I started wondering like, okay, I have all these skills. I'm about to become like a professional software engineer. I want to be able to do the same thing in terms of learning about Igbo culture and Igbo language very easily. And I remember like throughout college, I tried to learn Igbo online by myself, but it was such a terrible experience just because there was no like high quality online like guided experiences that made it really like easy for you to feel confident about what you're learning.
Mhm.
I felt like the best way to learn Igbo was to take a class. And sometimes it's like a broke college student, I didn't have money to take an extra class on top of my classes. So when I graduated from Dartmouth, I was trying to think about the best way. Okay, like how can I use my skills to help teach Igbo, even as someone who doesn't really speak the language to this day. And it didn't take until it took a whole pandemic for me to really sit down and think about how I want to like solve this problem. I moved out to New York right after college, but then when the pandemic hit in the beginning of 2020, I went back to California and stayed with my family for about a year and a couple months. And during that time, being back home as an adult with so much free time, I ended up really like sitting down and thinking about the current project that I have right now. And it's grown significantly. A lot of people believe in the idea. I'm definitely not the first one to have this idea, but I'm glad that people see the value, they want to contribute, and we've even seen really cool things happen.
Yeah, yeah, that's really awesome, especially the part about Japanese. I think it's always good when
Yeah,
people take a like a higher step. Like there's the Spanish and all, but then you go for the highest. And it reminds me of or rather the most complex. It reminds me of another YouTuber. I think his name is Ikena. Surprisingly,
yeah,
he's also Nigerian.
he's
And
Igbo, right?
he's Igbo, yeah, and
Yeah,
I think his first was also Japanese, and then he has like a bunch of languages he speaks now. So that's awesome. So now getting into this application itself, what exactly is it, and how exactly can people use it? Like, what's the experience like for them if they want to learn the Igbo language?
yeah. So the project started off. There's two separate projects technically. The first project that I started back in late of 2020 when I started programming, it's called the Igbo API. And it's just like any typical API, if you have experience using APIs where you make post requests or get requests, and then you get data back or you update data. The Igbo API serves as like a dictionary API where you can search a word in either Igbo or English,
Mm,
and then the server will just return back all the associated words with their part of speech, like if they're a noun or a verb, all their definitions, et cetera, et cetera. So that was the project that I was working on from September to like December of 2020. And that was very developer focused. Only developers will really be exposed to actually using APIs, which is really great because there's no paywall for the API. The only thing you have to do is sign up for developer tokens. And then beyond that point, you can build any application that you want that uses the Igbo API. Like a big belief of mine to just have like high
mm,
transparency, low barrier to entry of like utilizing this data. So that was a project that I started back late 2020. So I ended up building Nkawa Okwu, which is the dictionary app, which is the main facing application. So it's built on top of the Igbo API. Igbo API.
mhm,
So it's using the Igbo API whenever someone goes to nkawaokwu.com and they type in like niri for like water or something like that, or they can just type in water. What's happening is that the dictionary app is requesting from the Igbo API to get all the word information for water. The Igbo API is returning that information back, and then Nkawa Okwu is responsible for making it like rendering the information more nicely, right? So people can easily like sift through the word information that they're requesting back. On
yeah,
top of that, dictionary isn't static in the sense of where you ask for a word and get it back, but you can also save words. You can also update our database by suggesting adding words or changing words or even adding example sentences. The dictionary also supports 17 Igbo dialects. So if you speak a particular dialect, you can go into the dictionary and say, the dialectical variation for good morning in my dialect would be this, and then you can suggest it. So that's kind of like the high level of the Igbo API and Nkawa Oku as two separate applications.
cool, cool. I was just curious. Would you like to maybe is there something you'd like to share that sort of describes visually both of these components?
Yeah, so I can show you the infrastructure for the Igbo API. Let me pull that up real quick. So the Igbo API service diagram, I try to simplify it as much as possible just to get the high level architecture. So this is like the tech stack that we're using. And then after I talk through the tech stack, we're going to zoom in a little bit more on the back end to talk about what's actually happening in the back end. So the Igbo API is a separate application. If you go to igboapi.com, you're going to see the front end that's built with Next.js. This is a really great platform for developers to be able to play around with the API and see what kind of like service we're providing if they were to develop or create a developer token. So the front end is built with Next.js. And then the primary bulk of our application logic is a backend where we're using Express to be able to define our API routes very easily, very cleanly. We're using Node.js to be able to write JavaScript code for a backend service. And then we're using MongoDB to save all of our data from our Word data and our example data, our example sentence data. And then we're hosting this entire platform in one service or one application using Heroku. So every time someone makes a change and pushes it to our main branch, it's going to automatically redeploy it to Heroku. So then we can see those changes publicly very quickly. This is also an open source project. So we've had a number of developers be able to contribute and see their work go into production, which is really exciting. We also have this third-party trigger section where there are a couple of things that happen depending at different times, and I'll go into more detail about that a little bit later. Basically, what we're using for our third-party triggers is whenever we want to send an email, we're using SendGrid. Anytime we want to save like an audio pronunciation, because nearly 1,000 of our words have audio pronunciations, we use AWS S3 buckets and Lambda functions to be able to save that information. And then we're also using Docker, which is more for testing and development. So whenever someone pushes a change to their branch, we're going to spin up a Docker image to emulate the API locally or within GitHub specifically. And then running Docker allows us to run tests against that image of the API. So we don't have to require our developers to run the test locally every single time they want to make a change. That helps speed up development.
Right.
More specifically about what's happening under the hood of the Igbo API, I think there are two major flows that's happening right now. A lot of the work that I was doing back in September to December, was like just populating the database, getting the data, and that's like a one-time job. But usually what we're seeing now on like a daily basis is the two flows of merging documents and creating suggestion documents. So within the concept in the realm of the Igbo API, we have words and we have example sentences. Those are two separate collections in our MongoDB database. We also have word suggestion and example suggestion documents. And the reason why we have these two new collection types is so that people can create suggestion documents, which include changes to an original Word document. So let's say that you have a word for jump, right? And its part of speech is adjective. And that's an error, right? You want to be able to make a suggestion to correct that error. So instead of directly updating that Word document, we actually generate a new word suggestion document. And then that way we can make sure that the update from adjective to verb is correct. And then we merge that suggestion into the original Word document. Hopefully that makes kind of sense, as a little bit of sense. But basic concept is that we want to avoid people making direct edits to our Word and example documents, since our Word and our example documents are public. So it's just like an extra layer of protection.
Yeah.
So the flow for creating a suggestion document is that let's say that you do see an error on the dictionary app, and then you say, okay, I want to change the part of speech from adjective to verb. Once you make that change and you press submit, you automatically create that word suggestion and save it. And it goes automatically to our Node.js server in the backend. And basically what's happening underneath Node.js is that it's just validating the schema of our word suggestion, making sure that the word suggestion actually has a word, part of speech, and definitions. Also, it's checking to see if someone provided an audio pronunciation. So if they said jump and the person ended up recording jump, what's going to happen is that Node.js is going to save that data inside of our AWS S3 bucket. And then AWS S3 is going to return back to us a URL that points to that audio pronunciation file, so that like MP3. That gets passed back to Node.js. And then Node.js's final word suggestion document includes all the data from the client side, and then also the new URL that points to the audio pronunciation. and then that finally gets saved over into MongoDB. Once that's saved inside MongoDB, we can retrieve that data at any point in time, and that leads us to the merging document flow. So for the merging document flow, usually what happens is what I kind of described before, where you see a word, but you want to create an edit, and then you generate a word suggestion. And we can always pull word suggestions from MongoDB as well. When we decide that this word suggestion is correct, like the head word, part of speech, definitions, everything is correct, you just tell the API to merge the word suggestion. And what's happening here with Node.js is that it's going back to AWS, the S3 bucket that we have, and saying, hey, okay, we need to actually update the key of this audio pronunciation, because now this key is associated with a different document. We no longer want to associate this audio pronunciation with the word suggestion. Rather, we want to associate it with the new word that we're updating. Then AWS is going to be like, okay, you can update the ID. It's going to return back to us the new ID that's necessary to be placed on our new Word document. Node.js has all the data that it needs to be able to make the merge properly. So what it's doing is that it's going back through MongoDB, and it's basically overwriting the data that we saw originally inside of our word suggestion. So we have our Word document and we have our word suggestion document. And what's happening here is that our word suggestion document is being mutated, it's being overwritten, and it's matching the data that we see in our finally updated Word document. So we have two copies of the same word, right? Where the Word document is always a source of truth, but we have a word suggestion that's associated with that Word document in the sense that it includes all the changes that were made from the previous word suggestion. So these word suggestion documents, once merged, they still live in our database because they serve as a sense of history for where the Word document came from and how it's been updated over time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Those are the two major flows.
Yeah, yeah, that's this is awesome. Like, just being able to actually see, how everything moves around, and it's also, it makes me think it's a larger, it's a larger sense. Like, this is, in a way, is sort of, reusable. Like, is there any part of the vision that, maybe someday in the future you might actually support other languages, maybe specifically other African languages, because the way you designed it is in such a way that it's sort of agnostic of the specific language being used.
Yeah, I think it's definitely possible to go beyond Igbo, and I would love to see every Nigerian, every African language being cataloged like this. There
Yeah.
are just a couple things that I've learned from just like experience of not knowing the language in detail. For example, within the remote Slack community that we have professionals who have great knowledge about how to properly how to maintain like a dictionary, right? What are the best practices and how do you want to keep track of tone markings, IPA, et cetera, et cetera. And I think those things can be very language specific. So I think the overarching structure of having word and example documents and word suggestion and example suggestion documents, I think can work for any language, but it comes down to the word data. What kind of data do you want to associate with which word? And that really depends on like the language itself.
Mm.
So I would love to expand to like Yoruba, for example, that'd be amazing. But I would definitely need like professionals who know and understand the language to be able to tell me like this is what we want to do and this is what we don't want to do.
Yeah, yeah. This kind of thing is these are the things that many, I'm sure many teachers who of course would need government supports or any other kind of support will be happy to do, because being able to take this at scale, right, and
Yeah,
to have have something that everybody can just access and use to build applications, right? Like, there are times when, as a user of any app, I'm happy when I look at the app and the app has a translation in an African language. Like, even if it's like Swahili that I don't speak and I know nothing about,
yeah,
just
same.
seeing it there, always
Yeah.
always makes us feel like, yeah, there's something. So in the future, maybe your application will be something that many people would actually be coming to, like, since because you've already designed the API side, so many other applications beyond just the Unkawa Oku, I hope I said that right,
Yeah.
application, will be able to use the API. So I think this is really awesome.
Yeah, thank you. And I really want to iterate that the Igbo API repo, GitHub repo, is open source for a reason. People can copy and paste it and use it for their own language. I definitely believe that something like this should be open and free for people to, support their own language. Igbo is considered like a dying language or an endangered language. And given like how many Igbo people there are who love their culture and their language, it's a very sad prediction to have. So yeah, just want to have this open to help other languages as well.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Are there any maybe like any screens or something visual maybe with the application that you built on top of the APIs?
Yeah. So I can go to nkawaokwu.com. Yeah, so this is nkawaokwu.com. It's the dictionary app, and that's built on top of the Igbo API. So what I was describing before, where you're able to search in either Igbo or English. For example, I can type in, or even like yeah, for come, like come to me. And what you see here is that the front end's job is just to talk to the Igbo API. So Nkawa Oku is talking to the Igbo API that's hosted somewhere else. The Igbo API is like, okay, I'm going to return back this information to this to this web app, to this dictionary, and then our dictionary is just rendering it nicely so people can like look through it. On a little bit of on a deeper level, we're doing backend or like server side rendering, so the data isn't really coming as like a network request. Instead, we're returning back all the HTML that's needed to render. So if
Yeah.
I were to turn off my JavaScript, for example, all this data should still be on screen, which is really nice. You take a closer look at, yeah, right here, we can see that we have the head word. We also have its diacritic marking equivalent. You can see here that there's no diacritic markings, but usually we have like the high tone or low tone markings for certain words. We also keep track, we hand label words as being considered used for like central or standard Igbo. And then we also have the part of speech and the pronunciation. You'll be able to play the audio pronunciation and then hear how it's being pronounced. And we have the definitions and example sentences as well. I also mentioned that you can star words. So I'm not logged in. So if I were to click on the star, it's going to pull up this modal for me to log in real quick. Yeah, so you can star individual words. Like once you log in, you can see that I'm already logged in. I can click and unclick stars, and then I can move over to my profile where I can see all of my starred words, which includes, yeah, and then other words as well. On top of that, the concept of creating word suggestions is also possible. So let's say that I type in water and I say, okay, maybe I want to change this to a noun instead of a verb. Technically, that might be incorrect, but I can always just click on the edit dropdown and click on edit word. And then it's going to give me a pre-filled form with all my word data that I can change as a regular user. In this case, I'm like, it's not a verb, rather it's a conjunction, for example. So I click on that, I click on the review button, and then I can see what changes I've made. So my part of speech is now conjunction instead of a verb, and I can submit it. Essentially, the concept is that you'll be able to send that information, and our translators in the community would be able to review that content, say if it's good or not, and then merge it into our database. So the merging responsibilities and permissions is only allowed to our translators, or who are people that we work with together within a volunteer community.
Gotcha. And you mentioned it's server-side rendered, and I think going back to the architecture diagram, this was built with Next.js. So that means it's React on the front end, and then it's Node.js on the back end.
So that was specifically for the Igbo API. This is a
Okay.
separate piece of software. So the Igbo API, if you go to igboapi.com, which is for developers, this is using Next.js, which is also server-side rendered. It is using React, and it's using Next.js to be able to server-side easily.
Yeah.
Oku does not use Next.js, simply because configuration for Next.js was kind of complicated with the structure of like data flow that we've set up. So we ended up not going with it. But I definitely do think it is possible to use Next.js for the dictionary app. But at this point, we're in too deep. It would
Yeah,
be
yeah.
such a terrible process to revert everything.
Hmm.
But
Yeah,
I am a fan of Next.js. We do like it.
yeah, yeah. I think best the best approach is the one that works best for the team. Often as software engineers, there's always the sort of on pressure to use the latest and greatest. But if something works for the team, it helps the team stay productive and get the job done, and
Yeah.
it doesn't cause any vulnerabilities to the application or to the servers. Then it's good to go with.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely agree.
yeah. And now moving on to something I've wanted to ask a lot about is this community. I keep hearing, reviewers, open source contributors. What does the community structure look like? You mentioned Slack. Like, how exactly, how is the community around this designed?
Yeah, so the community is a Slack group, and the way that you can join is if you go to the volunteer page in the dictionary app and just say like what you're interested in contributing for. And then once you sign up through that volunteer form, you'll be able to have the link to join the Slack group. So I can quickly share my screen of what the Slack group looks like. I'll briefly run through it.
Hmm.
So this is our Slack group. It's called Igbo API. And usually the structure of it is that we have multiple channels where we have different roles, specific channels. Like content writing is for the people
Hmm.
who are responsible for writing our monthly newsletters, email newsletters. We have a general channel, which is where we have general discussions about achievements and milestones that we've reached. We also have Grant Researcher, which is a very quiet channel. We have our introductions channel where we greet new people. We also have a Nkawa Oku specific channel where we talk about the progress made on the dictionary app. Press is where I just drop any links where I've been able to get showcased for this project. Software engineers talking about technical topics. Our translators channel is where all of our like linguists and translators talk about what is the best practice of updating and maintaining the word data in our database. UI UX is where all of our digital designers or product designers work. They're responsible for redesigning Nkawa Oku and also the Igbo API homepage. We also have a voice recorders channel where these are people specifically contributing by recording voiceovers or the audio pronunciations. And then web scraping was a very old project that we actually ended up completing. We were basically scraping data from BBC Igbo, and we're just saving it in this like massive like GitHub repo. We haven't done anything with it yet, but it will be great data for NLP projects or machine learning
Yeah,
projects.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, this is I'm just wild. Just looking at all this, like the amount of effort that's gone into this, coordinating, organizing, schedules, actually, build, not just building up the system itself, but the community behind it. I think the more over time, one thing I realized personally is, there's definitely strength in numbers. Having a community that's driven and understands the vision, right, is a very wonderful thing to have. Like as a leader, once you're able to define that vision, and people can your followers or your members or contributors can buy into that vision and they see that intuition, right? It's like almost multiplying yourself through other people. So it's really amazing, and this is really well done.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
honestly can't do it. I can do 80% of the stuff that we're doing by myself. I can program, and that's it. Everything from knowing if Igbo words are correct or not, if the audio pronunciations are correct, that's out of my scope. So yeah, strength in numbers definitely, and just like believing in a community, trusting in people, and
Hmm.
giving them time and space to really shine and do what they do best.
Hmm.
I really don't like micromanaging. I don't have time to micromanage. And I feel like people really appreciate it when they have the space and freedom
Hmm.
to take a break, or to contribute. I feel like their work is very valued. So I always try to lead with that mindset in the community where people can take time off. I don't
Mm.
have any expectations where they have to keep working. I
Yeah,
need time off as well too. Everyone can just contribute whenever it works for them.
yeah, yeah. That's really awesome. Uh, I'm curious to know what would be, sort of your advice for anyone who's taking a similar path, or what are some very specific lessons? Sorry, what are some very specific lessons that you've learned through this process that you feel are things that other people who are watching this should know?
Yeah, the first thing that I learned was that you got to really share your work, whether it's in a very messy or quote unquote incomplete state. People really do love it when you build something. And I feel like there was such a big worry for me growing up that people would judge me, make fun of me for creating anything that I've like put my mind to. But people really want to see you succeed. People really want to see you be happy and be proud of like what you've created. And that doesn't change when you share stuff on the internet, when you come with like an idea that's providing value and helping other people or could help other people. So I always say share work with people who are around you, your family, your friends, roommates, colleagues, whoever. And on top of that, do it online. I wouldn't be afraid to create like a Twitter account, Instagram, whatever the best social media channel is for you. And just like share on like a consistent basis, whether that's once a week, twice a month, once a month. And just like share your work so people can kind of like be very excited about what
Yeah,
you're building.
yeah,
And through that, the community kind of starts naturally following you, where people start to become more invested in the progress that you're making publicly.
hmm,
I think on top of that, people love to see process. I think we've grown up in a world where people really expect to see the final product. You think of like a celebrity, like a one-hit wonder who just like
yeah,
popped up on the scene, but in reality, they've been working on
yeah,
their craft for at least 5, 10 years, and people really like watching the process, but that's not very normalized. So I
mm,
would say like share your work consistently and have people know what you're actually putting time into.
yeah, yeah,
Um, yeah, I guess other lessons that I've learned too has been really knowing how to delegate your tasks, understanding what's worth your time. I think as the community has grown, I've been able to meet and talk with a lot of great people, as you and yourself. But I think there's always been a matter of me trying to figure out what is worth my time and how's this going to help me, how's it going to help my community. So just knowing how to like delegate your tasks, understanding the values, sharing your work with other people, relying on other people as well, trusting in them to help you. And then by the end of it, just being patient. Growth isn't consistent. There have definitely been weeks where I've just been like questioning whether or not I should continue working on a project like this. But taking it slow, not making it the most important thing in my life,
yeah.
made it very still important in my life. But giving myself time to like breathe and think about, how do I want to incorporate this project long term?
Yeah, yeah, those are very solid pieces of advice because especially the first thing you mentioned, sharing your work and sharing it frequently without worrying about people judging the quality or whatever. Because at the end of the day, even those judgments or remarks about quality or whatever, they actually that's a way you can actually incorporate that as feedback, so indirectly, anyone who's pointing fingers is indirectly actually helping with the right mindset. So this is something that we've heard from previous guests as well. Just the ability to share your work and to not do things in a silo. To because at the end of the day, it's nobody wants to build a cathedral in the middle of the desert, right? Yeah,
Oh, so wise.
yeah, it's all this Igbo words I've been looking at,
Yeah.
getting wiser. So it's like you want to let people see what you're doing, right? Don't go do something in the desert. Yeah, I think this has been a really great episode. What would you say people can follow you, find your work? You mentioned GitHub and all that. What are some places that would be best for people to follow up with you?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of links. If you want to follow my personal updates on the project, you can follow my Twitter at Ijemma Oh No. It's like IJEMMAOHNO,
Mm.
Ijemma Oh No. If you want to play around with the dictionary app, you can go to www.nkawaoku.com. Hopefully, the link will be somewhere
Yeah,
in
in the
screen.
description. Yeah.
If you want to volunteer, if you want to contribute, you think that you're great, you could be a great audio recorder, translator, software engineer, and digital designer, you can go to the volunteer link in the dictionary app. So it's nkawaoku.com/volunteer. If you're a developer and you want to play around with the Igbo API for a personal project, igboapi.com would be your link.
Mhm.
And then general project updates, support, you can go to the Twitter account for Nkawa Oku, which is at Nkawa Oku. And I think that's it.
Yeah, and all of these links will be added in the description section. So that brings us to the end of this episode. So please, if you're watching this, remember to like, comment down below about what you
I
like
like
this video.
doing good things. He's doing
Yeah,
great things.
yeah,
Like, comment, subscribe.
yeah. Please, please, please like this video. I don't know why people are not liking them. People are watching, but they're not liking, they're not subscribing. You know, we have to support, right?
You have to
We have to
support.
support. Yeah. So and
I'm
of
gonna
course,
like the video. Don't worry.
yeah, I think
I subscribed. I liked all previous videos, but I'm definitely gonna like this video.
yeah, so we'll get at least one like confirmed. One like confirmed. So we need a second like. Someone needs to be the first with the second like. All right. Thank you very much, Ijemma. And
Yeah,
thanks for being on the show today.
thank you so much for having me. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah. See you and have a nice day. Bye.
Yeah.